very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Today, I'm Chamberlain Nasir reporting live from Abuja.
Good morning. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. It's good to see you.
Well, without taking that duty away from you, it's just to acknowledge that how fast that the year wears on. But with great expectations, the much-awaited February is here. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
So I don't need to tell you anymore. Welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Oh, okay. Well, just wondering. So, well, this time, I was just thinking when we saw the Corruption Perception Index yesterday. Well, yeah, those reports, they usually highlighted when they take a look at several indexes, indices, scenarios, as it were. But, you know, sometimes, if not most times, I think we already know how some things play out. But it's always, in the last 7 years, very interesting because lots of people look to that, especially when they do remember that this administration came in, you know, three fronts, corruption being one of the major components of it all. And what we always try to highlight is that, look, governments come, governments go, we know. But what we always talk about, it's not just us here in this country, by the way, even Africa-wide, internationally, that emphasis on us ensuring institutions work. I mean, this is a huge part of the entire thing. Now, if we're looking at this CPI score, you know, from 2016 to 2022, where Nigeria, look at our index there by the Transparency International about how we fare or rank with respect to tackling corruption. I think mainstreaming, not just mainstreaming, ensuring that, for instance, if this government goes, when this government goes, because that's what the law provides, that's what the law provides. Can the next government, will it just come to the system naturally with respect to how we fight corruption? Because we've seen time and again that most times when policies start off with whichever government, whenever another one comes through, and this is both at the federal and state levels, no matter how much of public funds may have been spent to build whatever policy or ensure things work, they just jettison it. Sometimes they abandon it and want to start their own. Some of them think that, yeah, I want to glory in the fact that I started this and I finished it. Yet, in another breath, they'll tell you government is a continuum when it suits them. But I think what we should focus on really is institutionalizing not just the fight against corruption, but several other components. Because if you look through it properly, you will see that continuity may just be the major link, the key link or component that we need to ensure we get to where we are faster. Much faster than we have been all these years. So, however they want to take a look at this corruption perception index, they should ask themselves, if I leave, if the next government doesn't naturally just key into some of these things, it means I haven't put in place measures, I haven't institutionalized the fight against corruption to the extent that when you get into a system or society, you know that certain things are no-no. That if you do this, this is what you get. It just flows naturally like that. But can we say the same thing?
Okay, so part of what broke yesterday as a part of this Corruption Perception Index is that we moved 4 places up on the index. In other words, we did better by 4 places. Not because we did anything internally or that our score improved. No, it's because some other countries did worse than we did. And that's why, you know, we moved up, even though our score remained the same. And just in case you're struggling to understand the score, 0 is the worst, 100 is supposed to be the best. So imagine you're getting 24 over 100. That is a fail. Your teacher would not hesitate to put an F on that sheet, assuming he or she was scoring a paper. So we're not doing well at all. We're not doing well at all when it comes to the Corruption Perception Index. And the key questions to ask, because part of the key points that this administration said it was going to tackle was corruption, security, the economy, and corruption. So we've always known that since time immemorial, corruption has always been a cankerworm. With every government that comes in, goes out, will always mention corruption. They say if you listen to all the cool speeches ever delivered, part of the reason why the military would justify its takeover of government will be corruption. So this is where we are. A democracy in the Fourth Republic, how many years down the line, and this is how we're faring in terms of corruption. And look at how we fared in the last, 7 years or so? Not so good. The highest we've gotten is 28. Which is really, really, really terrible. We need to do something urgent about it. I do not know. I know that if you speak to governments now, or you speak to people within government, they're going to tell you that what they're looking to do is preventing corruption. They say it is easier to prevent corruption than to fight it. And after the crime has been committed, oftentimes it takes lots of money and energy and efforts to bring those who have perpetrated these things to book, but that if you're able to prevent it, you could ensure that the system runs smoother. So they will point to the Treasury single account, for instance, which is something that started in the Jonathan administration. Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala was big on having a single account, and this administration has continued with it. Yeah. So which is something that is commendable. You talk about a number of other things. Maybe the NFIU trying to monitor local government funds and where they go to. I'm trying to put reforms in place to ensure that the state governments, keep their keep their own monies, and local governments keep their money. They're not dipping their hands into the funds of local governments. That has been received with mixed reactions, but it's a major reform that could change. Well, the financial autonomy bill sadly did not sail through. But because we're dealing with perception, the question is, what is the perception of many Nigerians with regards to corruption? Where are the common places that Nigerians encounter corruption on a daily basis? And what are we really doing? Because some people will say that when you're talking about Treasury single account, those are grand things. Those are things that not the everyday Nigerian comes in contact with it. When you talk about what we need, for instance, the police for, when we need to pay our utility bills, maybe for those of you that get government water, for those that still have to pay maybe a post-paid electricity bill or prepaid, even prepaid, because some people bypass their meters and then they give the officials money so that they look away. Those are criminal tendencies. Those are corrupt tendencies. In fact, it is the height of corruption to steal. You steal from the state, you steal utility, you make everybody else pay for you. It's terrible. So these are the kinds of things that Nigerians still have to experience on a daily basis. When they have to go to law enforcement agencies, when they have to go to the courts, when they have to interface with any government agency. You want to get a passport, for instance. How easy is it? You want to get your national ID card or your driver's license. Is it seamless? Your VIO papers. These are the things that continue to add to the perception of corruption and make it worse. If people are unable to conduct business easily, these are all the interfaces that we need to work on to ensure that we improve. I believe that if there is a significant improvement in these areas and Nigerians are able to get their businesses done seamlessly without having to know anyone, I think it is Aisha Yusufu who says that she's working towards a country where the child of no one can be someone. So if these kinds of things are made possible, and I believe that, certainly we should be doing much higher on the Corruption Perception Index. Bukola Anayo.
Yes, indeed. What a way to sum it all up, Maupe. A country where a child of no one can be someone without knowing anyone. And it's a good way to also tie to the common people on the street. Corruption is not only found in high places as it is perceived in the country. What is corruption? it's service, when you want to access service and you have to pay something, an illegal fee to access the service. It's bringing down standards, so to speak, and it necessarily does not have to do with money. And, we always call to account Nigerians in different walks of life on this platform when there's fuel scarcity and you hoard the product, or you want to access it, you pay an illegal toll just to access it. But when it comes really to the Corruption Perception Index, I doubt that it's a good thing, to have the Transparency International put countries on their toes so they know how they're doing. But I doubt that countries need anyone to tell them how they're doing before they know how they're doing. So we just need to reflect and, look at public institutions, look at accountability and governance, and look at ourselves as individuals and see really how we're doing. And, just to refer to a few events in the year gone by, the trial of the former Accountant General of Federation for alleged misappropriation of funds to the tune of, what's the figure again? 109 billion naira. I look at all of the funds mopped up, according to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, as a result of a sale of assets. Look at all of those funds mopped up, and the administration would say when you fight corruption, corruption fights back, just to mention a few. So we just need to reflect. And I note that one of the high points of the CPI index for 2022 is that activities in the military sector have weakened our standings on the anti-corruption watch. And that is reminiscent yet again of calls to the military to make public, to be more transparent in its procurement process. Go back a few years down the line, recall the 2.1 billion naira cash for arms sale. And you come back to 2023 as this administration winds down. It has spent 8 trillion naira on fighting insecurity. Yet, where are we? Another high point on the CPI index also notes that the pardon granted former governors of Taraba State and I think Plateau State was a major setback, in Nigeria's standings on the CPI. So we just need to reflect and see what are we doing wrong? How can we make it better? All of those funds that go to, alleged misappropriation, when put into infrastructure development, when put into other aspects of the economy, of course, Nigeria will go a long way in actualizing that development that it so yearns for. Ayo.
I would just hope not around some of the issues that have been raised. I think Mark was talking about the need to prevent corruption as opposed to fighting corruption. The question you want to ask is, what are the issues, what are the institutions that are prepared for us to do that? Civil society organizations have been talking about the Auditor Generals, or the Audit Commission for eons. How far with that? I mean, if that was in existence, I doubt that all these conversations we've been having about trillions of naira, discovered or perceived to have been taken away from the coffers of the nation, from one Auditor General's report to another Auditor General's report from 2015 until the latest, maybe 2020 report. How far so far? That's just one thing that we need to consider. And then, Chamberlain, you were talking about institutions. There are many people who refer to the fact that corruption began when the federal government at some point in our history dealt decisively with the establishment, with the civil servant, the permanent secretaries who were called super PAMSECs at the time, who had enough strength, enough power to look any government in the eye, including the military government, and tell them, no, this is the way to do things, this is not the way to do things. Once those people were retired without anything to go for them to fall back to, what happened? The others wanted to say, if this happened to my predecessors, then what's going to happen to me? Then they began to help themselves. That's the illusion that some people make. So what are the things we are putting in place to ensure that we reverse that trend? Strengthen the institutions. We cannot address strengthening the institutions if we do not address what caused it in the first place. I often ask that question, what is the origin of corruption? If we find it, perhaps we might be looking in a particular direction. Recall some of the things that Bukola also mentioned here. If these institutions were strong enough, how in the universe would any individual be able to take some money out, or even if it's by collusion, take some money out of public coffers? And then I think it was Mark that was talking about, and Bukola talking about, we as a people. You guys are going too far. Just yesterday we were talking about what the DSS said that they found out. The people, the syndicates that were, dealing with this new Naira notes and all of that. For God Almighty's sake, if we had that patriotic spirit in our hearts, that we were taught moral instruction, civic education when we were in school, how in the universe would that have happened in the first place? So the corruption is not just about money. It's first of all about our attitudes. How do you drive on the road? How do you shunt or not shunt when you're on a queue? How are we behaving right now at fuel stations? How do we block other people? It's supposed to be just one queue, and what do we have? 3, 4 queues blocking major highways. That is corruption. Who is dealing with that? How can we expect government to do it all when we have our own responsibilities? Chamberlain.
If you cast your mind back, remember when the president won an election and when he was sworn in, just go back to that and remember the first few months, how things were working. We remember that even the power supply, goodness, was so steady, and you thought, what's going on? Are we still in the same country? And several things just like that took shape. Things were falling in line. And now, look at where we are. So, several lessons there. They talk about how individuals win elections. Well, those theories, that's why in social sciences, when they say, look, you can't just make categorical statements when it's got to do with social science-related kind of matters. It's a whole lot of scenario to break down, but there's pre, during, and post. How come things happened at that time? What then happened after? Because he had a team that made him lose elections, and he had a team that he was working with afterwards. So all of this analysis, I'm sure lots of people would have done it, so let me not belabor the point, as it were, but there are huge lessons there. So if we want to solve our challenges, take that as a case in point. Perhaps we'll go a long way in understanding why things are happening and what can be done to get us back to where we want to be. Because in this country, we can. We absolutely can. We've seen it and we know we can. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the dailies this morning. We'll start with New Telegraph, everybody. And it's got to do with the Naira redesign. No one will lose money after February 10 in Emefiele. And many people say, hey,
But read the story first before you jump to conclusions.
That's why I want to go to the riders now. So that you know that you're not alone when that expression comes, when you can blow your cheeks out. Look at the first rider. It says, old notes not legal tender after deadline, but will still be accepted by CBN only. Only.
So if you don't do it within this window, you will come all the way to Abuja, find the CBN office. Oh, did they say we can use the CBN in the States? Will we be able to use the CBN?
If it's a CBN office, yeah, why not? So that's why they have those offices in the first place, I reckon. So, of course you can. If not, I was going to say, yeah, send it to yours truly. We'll help you forward it to the appropriate quarters. But
don't be fooled. You'll do it for a fee.
A service is provided. There's what they call service sector. If you look at the contribution of the service sector to the GDP, it's important.
You're going to be charged for advertising on this platform.
Oh, okay. All right. I seal my lips. Look at the other rider. Uncovers mismanagement of 4 million. What? Is this million or trillion? It looks like 4 million naira by commercial bank in Ogun.
Yes, it's million. I see that.
It's not typo.
Yeah.
I don't
Mismanagement of 4 million. Maybe 4 million naira new notes. 4 million naira by commercial bank. Yeah.
Because
possible.
those racketeering,
Yes.
who knows now, but they need to send a clear message to all these peeps, just so they know what's going on with this, what the sheriff thinks about all of these things. And then fuel scarcity will affect 2023 polls, INEC. Wow, this is not what you want to hear or see. 6 use of NNPC's land. Okay, well, there's so much to actually check out here, but I'm going to let you go ahead and take a look at that yourself, so we can accommodate several other dailies. That is New Telegraph this morning.
Well, Leadership has this one for you this morning. At Leadership Conference Awards, so they also had an event. Look at what they came up with. Odinga, technology can be used to rig election.
Say what?
Right. You heard right. And you know who this is, right? This is lead opposition figure in
Good
Kenya.
old Ryla.
Yes, and you know that Kenyan politics, in 2007 it was bloody. You know, there was post-election violence that broke out there that was so unpleasant to see. Kenya has not had the easiest of elections. The elections are always closely watched, very much the same way Nigeria's elections are also closely monitored. So this is no surprise. Kenya had a thing with technology, and they found out that
the same system that we're using now, we're trying to use now.
Yeah, well, they used it recently, and thankfully it worked this time around. But in previous elections, the results were heavily contested because it was seen that there were certain inconsistencies.
He even contested this one.
Yeah, even with the introduction of technology. So people have said that it's not the kind of technology you introduce.
It's the people.
Exactly. If you don't reform your mind, so you can reform the electoral act all you want, you can reform the electoral process all you want, you can introduce the best innovations all you want. If the people are not reformed and the minds of the politicians are not reformed, this is what you keep getting.
I don't know. Wait, do you want us to now use AI to conduct elections in this country? What are we doing to ourselves? ChatGPT. What? Did I hear GPT? Oh, God. What's going on in my mind this morning?
Just in case you're wondering, GPT in Yoruba means 419, fraud. That's not what I said. That's...
Oh, dear.
This, I'm referring to the new competitor of Google, ChatGPT. It's called GPT, okay? But this is the lead headline. Technology can be used to rig election. We don't want to hear that with our new beavers. Nobody wants to hear that. Credibility of election depends on INEC courts. That's according to Oshibajo. 2023 will be the best in nation's history.
Yeah,
so that's our Senate president counteracting him and saying, no, with our own beavers technology, it's going to be the best.
Yeah, but even though, yes, well, it's good to be optimistic, but we should listen.
We need to manage that optimism.
Yeah, we need to listen.
Because right now people are asking questions from the Oshun tribunal. How is it possible that with the introduction of beavers, overvoting is still possible?
Remember, perception is a lot of people's reality.
Indeed. Delivering credible polls, challenge of the moment, that's credited to Mrs. Unda-Azaya. Will tackle drug menace frontally, Marwa declares. Leadership Award, inspiration for future accomplishments, that's from Orama. I'll make NSCDC world class. Those are from the recipients of the awards that they gave yesterday. And look at this, INEC worries of a worsening fuel crisis ahead of polls. So they had a meeting with the NNPC yesterday. They have details for you on page 7 of the paper. Don't disenfranchise over 3 million students, OB tells INEC.
Yes, sir.
So details on page 12 of the paper. Naira redesign, no Nigerian will lose money. That's according to Emefiele, CBN governor. Reps, okay, that's another loan. I have to take this story though, so in case you're wondering, you might need to look at page 7 for details. Reps approve PMB's 1 trillion Naira loan, defer 22.7 trillion Naira request. That is the ways and means which the president is asking them to restructure. Page 7 is where you see details. But I used to imagine it was a Senate that had powers to approve loans.
I thought so too.
So you might want to flip to page 7 to see just what this, maybe this is some concurrence or exactly, or maybe this is the House doing its own first ahead
The
of
National
when
Assembly
this
has to approve it.
Exactly.
So what, loans
the
at the
whole
last
of the
minute?
National Assembly. Well, you know, the budget is going to be funded, you know, through loans. So the budget is going to last the whole of the year. They have to start from somewhere, don't they?
Well, by May, the new government will...
Well, coming. Hopefully there'll be some money in the coffers and all of this will not have been spent. But page 7 is where you get details. They have a number of other stories for you. We'll leave it there. Okay, they have a guest column with Raila Odinga. He's writing on the back page of Leadership this morning, credible elections and an economy in transition. That's the back page that they have for you. Let's leave it there for Leadership newspapers.
And flip to this Nigeria. This Nigeria seems to be a bit in a bit of some of agreement with Leadership newspapers, as it also leads with something on BVAS. Plot to clone BVAS. INEC raises fresh alarm, warns fuel scarcity, endangers Commission's plans. EU observers call for violence-free exercise. Isn't it too close to the elections for this plot to begin to emerge?
Well, it was a comment made by Mr. Okoye yesterday when he came on our program, saying, well, if it's an allegation, so let's just hope that that never happens. And I think another paper, I think, also talked about BVAS is definitely, what do we call it? What have they been calling it? Game changer?
Game.
So it definitely is all eyes on BVAS for everyone. It is technology. There will be attempts to hack.
To harvest 3 digits on the
there will be
PVC.
There will be attempts to hack. So, but and there's an African proverb that says, when a child is smart enough to pretend to die, the mother is also smart enough
I warn you, you're going to interpret.
To bury.
Oh yeah, interpret.
I just did.
Well, we thank this Nigeria for reporting us in a grand way this morning. Okay, so let's look at other stories going above the nameplate. Well, right beside the nameplate, you find this one. CBN, money supply in Nigeria reached all-time high. That's 52.14 trillion naira in 2022. 52.14 trillion naira. Isn't that some form of an excess? And that says that, you know, that which has been mopped up as a result of the new monetary policy is inadequate compared to what CBN is reporting to be in circulation, in 2022. Let's hope that the gains of the new monetary policy continue. I'll take a look at this one. Confusion as security operatives allegedly stop pro-Tinubu rally in Niger. We appeal to all politicians, all political parties to let everyone have expression, you know, amid these political campaigns. So that's the name of the game, live and let live. APC-PDP trade words over thuggery in Lagos. You find that one on page 12 inside this Nigeria. And lastly, Nigerians groan over scarcity of new notes in banks, ATMs, POS. Emefiele appears in NAS, says banks can still accept old notes after February 10. So that's reassuring. But the scarcity of the new notes continue, and we hope that the banks address it. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
Daily Independent has this one on its front page. It's about money. New Naira notes. No Nigerian will lose money despite deadline. Ascribed to the governor of CBN. Accuses commercial banks of breaching CBN guidelines. Question I would like to ask straight away, so what's the penalty for breaching the guideline? Says EFCC, ICPC, NFIU working with CBN on notes monitoring. Reps pass Buhari's 1 trillion naira ways and means loan request. You know, that comment coming from the governor of CBN about what did and that the commercial banks are breaching this thing. I hope that the CBN has also received that advice from the DSS that some bank officials are colluding with racketeers, or they're part of some kind of, racketeers to defraud, if I can use the term, the country because of these new Naira notes. So no statement.
Absolutely, it's a financial crime.
Exactly. So shouldn't there be a statement from the CBN on that? Maybe that statement has been made and we are not aware of it. It will be nice to know, what is the CBN doing about that one? If there has been an arrest, which banks are these? And is there something that the bankers committee can do to ensure that this does not happen, or are they in cahoots? I don't know. All kinds of things to say about that one. Right under the picture on the front page, post-2023 poll disputes, NBA threatens action against erring judges. Let's just use that popular saying. Just do it. That's Daily Independent this morning. And that's the much of the papers we can take this morning. Right after now, the elections are building up. Let's get into it after this break. Stay with us.
After failing to honor two previous invitations from the ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives, which is investigating the scarcity of the new notes, Central Bank Governor Mr. Godwin Emefiele finally appears before the lawmakers. His appearance comes after a threat of arrest by the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
First, let me apologize for my inability to be here. It was not intended to undermine your work, undermine the committee, neither is it intended to undermine the hallowed chambers of the House of Representatives.
Mr. Emefiele reacts to the scarcity of the new notes after pausing over-the-counter withdrawals.
I addressed the bankers on Sunday, and I expressed to them my disappointment, and in fact, disappointment of the president. Many of us have unfortunately seen the new Naira, instead of being used for the purpose it is meant to, the new Naira is being used in parties, in celebrations. And some of them said, well, maybe it's money from the ATM. I said, no. Money from the ATMs are already broken. They are in leaflets. But what we saw being stamped on people at parties were packets of the new Naira notes, which means that they had breached certain aspects of the guidance notes we gave to them.
The policy is a government policy being carried out by a component of Nigerian government. The institution here also is a component of the government, in fact, an arm of government. So this is, of course, a welcome submission. It is a welcome answer, but unfortunately at a belated point. Only if you had communicated this to us much earlier, the crisis would not have come up at all. Nigerians would have gone home to sleep without any fear of let or hindrance.
Perhaps the good news to many who are yet to deposit their old notes is Mr. Emefiele agreeing with Section 20, subsection 3 of the CBN Act.
Subject to the content of the CBN Act, Section 20, subsection 3, which says, even after the old currency has lost its legal tender status, that we are mandated to collect those monies. And I stand with the House of Representatives on this. What does that mean? You would have lost its legal tender status, in which case we have moved on, but you have your money that you have not been able to send into the bank. We certainly will give you the opportunity to bring them back into the CBN and redeem it. Either you pay it in your bank account or you want to do exchange, we give you. You will not lose your money. That is the assurance I give Nigeria.
While members of the committee appear dissatisfied with the explanation of the CBN governor on the scarcity of the new notes, they request for all records on the disbursement of the new notes, to which the Apex Bank agrees. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
welcome back. Yes, indeed, as you've seen, the Senator Arishe joins us next. He's the former Chairman of the Senate Committee on Privatization. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Well, for a lot of people, that report or that meeting with the CBN in the House, it appears as though he can breathe easy now. Maybe everybody can now say, oh, okay. But do you have the same feeling? You think that, well, things can have been normalized now, considering the previous opera or hoopla?
Oh, yes. Certainly. We have to thank Honorable Dogua and the CBN governor for making this clarification. Ab initio, that is the position of the Constitution vis-a-vis the Act governing the central bank. You cannot declare illegal your legal tender. People started refusing to accept even the old notes. And in Senate claims, it's never supposed to happen at all. Now, you have issued this currency. You said people should come in and exchange it, put it in the bank. I do not understand the part that says when you put the money in the bank, you can only take 20,000 or withdraw 100,000 a week. I don't know the purpose.
Now 500,000 for individuals.
Yes, for individuals, and 5 million. Is the plan to actually disrupt the economic system? We do not understand. Because, I mean, I've lived in America for a very long time, and I've never even noticed that they have changed any currency. And they've done that maybe twice since 1995. You will not even know anything. You take your money to the bank, they replace it with the new ones. There is no hassles. But when you begin to put some stipulations, putting timelines that are not feasible, particularly for those in the rural areas, we can only get the kind of result we got the last, about a week ago. On the golf course, we couldn't pay our caddies. We paid them like 3,000 Naira. You could not even get money from the ATMs. You couldn't get money from anywhere. And now imagine the POS terminals that have been serving the local communities. You now say there is no currency. The people who go there, they give them more currency, they refuse. So the economy for 3 days was practically hit.
Where do you think the miscommunication came from?
Well, again, what the governor just came out to say now, referring to Section 20 of the Act, verse 3, is the position of the law. People, if you have issued a currency and you are changing it, it's part of the rights of the CBN. But how do you now implement it is another issue. Now, when you say, and you are aware, even if not aware, the legal people in the CBN should be aware that that currency, you cannot put a time limit by which people will go and change. You issued it to the society to use. Some people have kept money in their homes. There are people who don't even have bank accounts. There are more than those who own bank accounts, maybe 2 to 1 in the country. Now you look at it, okay, you want to implement this. You are now saying in by so time, your legal tender will cease to become a legal tender.
So are you suggesting then that the deadline, which was extended by a week, it doesn't matter?
That is even a fire brigade approach. You cannot put, let's say you have extended it for 10 days. Now that he has explained that your money is still good, but bring your money to the bank. If you cannot make it within the window, it does not mean that your money is useless. So everybody can now go home and rest. Now, when you have the time, you know how Nigerians like to do everything last minute. You start rushing. But now that the explanation is there, that if you do not have the time, or all of a sudden, you discover you have kept some money, maybe in your jacket, you didn't change it. If it's 1,000, 2,000, it means a lot to some people. Then you can still go to the bank and say, this is my money. Then you still get value for your money because the government made it a legal tender. And you cannot just overnight say, this money, if you don't put it in the bank by so date, you are caught with it. And that is it. That is the impression people had ab initio. And that is why this problem actually came. Because there is no way. The intention of the CBN is to withdraw as much money from circulation as possible. But you cannot do that by fiat because some other areas of the economy will begin to suffer.
Can I ask you, did you support when the CBN said it was going to redesign sometime last year, were you in support of the reasons that it gave, the fact that, you know, so much money was out of the system and it wanted to be able to bring that money back into the system and gain control of its currency once again?
There is no doubt that it has a lot of advantages. Bringing the money in, it gave so many reasons that are very valid. Money being paid to kidnappers, for terrorism, and some people later adduced it to money to pay for elections. How can you make a policy because we're having an election that will not endure? Election is just about maybe max 1 month. So I cannot take that as a legitimate reason to say I want to keep all the money in the bank. I don't want people to have money to spend.
Well, no, let us remember, because you are the one who has added the third one now. Yeah. But that's not part of the reason that the CBN gave. The CBN gave the first two.
Yes, I said some people, not the CBN.
Which you talked about. So did you support that very first reason?
Oh, yes.
That, you know, they wanted to be able to gain control. So you thought that it was timely? And it was also a good reason for the CBN to have introduced the redesign at the time it did.
Now, if you are talking about timely, that's a different issue altogether. There have been terrorism in Nigeria predating Buhari's administration. And there has been kidnapping predating this administration as well. I was kidnapped in 2017. So I'm a victim. I understand the need to do something drastic to bring, some sanity into the system. So that if these people are getting money, we can trace it somehow. I support all those reasons. They're very genuine. It's the implementation, the timelines, that is the problem. Now, I don't think they did any trial version of the effect that we got. Because the moment ATMs were no longer dispensing, people had come to rely on this electronic banking. And the way they use it is to collect cash. Even on the POS terminal, there's supposed to be a means of doing electronic transactions. You send money, you pay, the merchant collects his money through his bank. But in Nigeria, it's being used for cash dispensing mostly. And so once you understand that this is the position, the culture of your people, now to change it, it's not something that you can do within 2, 3, or 9. You can't do it in 90 days. It has to be something that you plan systemically, and you continue to, as somebody brings old currency to the bank, you deposit it. You don't release any old currency out. You keep on giving them the new ones. But the money, the quantum of money available to the banks is certainly inadequate. Yeah, even so the banks are still having the old currencies. They pay with it now.
It would seem that, how do I put it now? It would seem that the CBN did that deliberately, even though I'm sure from his own calculations, he must have thought that the amount of cash which they had released should have been enough, assuming people were not taking these monies and using them for untoward actions. For instance, spraying them at Owambe in bundles and what have you. There are those kinds of situations which we have seen. Imagine that all of those kinds of monies were made available, because right now we don't even know how many more of those new currencies are in people's bedrooms. We don't know. So assuming things were distributed properly, don't you think that it would have had the right effect, considering also that they also wanted to introduce a cashless policy? It's been in existence for a long time. A lot of Nigerians are now doing their banking, via online means. And I'm sure that they must have relied on some data for them to say, if we have this much cash in circulation, it should have been enough. Don't you think that something went wrong in terms of how we all reacted to this particular policy?
Well, it's scarcity. We were saying that the foreign countries are very organized. When the train is supposed to arrive, in 5 minutes, you know it will be there. But there was a scenario that the train broke down. By the time a train now came, everybody started rushing. They forgot about the decency that they were already used to being on the queue. But they was fighting for it to just get it. When there is crisis, you always get the worst out of the human beings. Now, in Nigeria, where there is scarcity of currency, which is the legal tender, and you are estimating you have collected about 1.9 trillion of currency in circulation, and maybe you have made provision for 1 trillion. You assume that 1.9 trillion only belongs to the rich people. No. People go to the Bole woman. They want roasting yam on the roads. That is what they live on. And they pay their school fees from those little things. Are you now going to compel somebody selling on the street or selling Bole to start taking a card that has implications of cost? And that is another scenario that we're looking at, that even the CBN now wants to start issuing cards. So the question is, what is the role of the commercial bank? What is the role of the CBN? If the CBN is now going into the sphere of consumer banking. So the question we start asking is that we cause so much trouble trying to resolve issues without in-depth study of what is going on.
You're talking about the launch of Afrigo.
Whatever name they call it. That means for you to use a card, you must have an account somewhere. So is that account going to be in the CBN, where they now issue you a card for it? Or even if it's a credit card. So the CBN wants to now, is that they are doing social service and they are creating credit and put it on the debit card produced by the CBN.
But I heard they said they will work with the banks on that one.
So if they're working with the banks are already issuing debit cards to all their customers. You go to any bank now, average bank, you get your card, maybe 15, 30 minutes.
Yes, but there's a payment channel through which that that card is routed. For instance, it could be Verve, it could be MasterCard, it could be Visa. I think what they're saying is that Afrigo should now be one of the payment channels that cards are also,
now
that banks should also be looking at.
That totally has no, even if it has precedence, it's not what people and civilized nations are used to. America does not own MasterCard. They don't own Visa. Nigeria has a card called Verve. You know, these are retail issues. It does not concern the CBN. All the CBN needs to do is, okay, you banks issue this, issue that, and put the policies in place to make sure that the thing works, either through NIPS and ensure that transaction goes seamlessly. When the central bank now says they're issuing a MasterCard, Afrigo Bank, a central bank card, for what purpose? Are you trying to compete with the domestic banks, with the commercial banks? Do you want to put, is there anybody who will say that CBN is issuing a card, who will not prefer to go and collect CBN's card and start looking at the commercial? There are tremendous implications on our economy. They should just drop it.
Okay. Well, the deadline for that currency, it still stands though. Because from what the CBN says, what that means is, well, you can bring your monies to the DMBs, deposit money banks, up until that deadline, after which you can then take it to the CBN.
Sure.
So I think that still subsists. So
that is
we'll just
fine.
put that in context.
But that is very fine. That's why I said, that's why I thanked Dokua and the CBN governor, at least for allowing the public to know that their money is not lost. So after the deadline, you can still take your money to the bank, only you will not be able to spend it on the street.
Yeah, so it will still cease to be a legal tender.
Yeah.
But you will not lose the value until you take it to the CBN.
Exactly. Or even to your commercial banks, you drop it to your bank. The bank understands the fact that you cannot just make by fiat that from tomorrow the money that you have, that you've labored for, is now useless.
Oh. But do you think that, with the window don't you think that with the window that has been given and the awareness that has been raised, don't you think that everybody who's affected by this, who still has old currency with them, should by now have been able to find some means to, you know, get their currency to the bank by now? I mean, as long as that money is legitimate.
It's not even the problem of the consumers. When you take money to the bank, even before that deadline, you could not get new currencies, new notes. I went to the bank, and I was paid old notes. And of course,
when was that? How long ago?
Last week.
Last week is no longer this week, Senator.
Last week.
The point I'm trying to make is that it is possible that by this week, the circumstances might have changed.
No, even if you say it, yes, it would have improved. Yeah. But if you say you are giving 1 week window for people to go and put all their monies in the bank, can the banks handle it? Are they prepared for that? So when everybody starts queuing, so that's why you must manage the implementation of these policies. So, and of course, most of the money in circulation on the people holding POS terminals, they are still collecting the old currency. And of course, let me remind you, the issue of people having new notes and they are spraying it, this is the time that the CBN should have activated the policy of if you spray money or you matter money or you do all that, it's a 6 months J term. That was passed in 2007. It's still there. It's just that making it effective, enforcing it became a big challenge. Unless you now have to have every EFCC staff in every party, either in Lagos or in Abuja or Port Harcourt, anywhere, it's not practicable. But when it becomes very glaring that you are breaking the law and you want to put some sanity, you can maybe 1 or 2 people as examples. So the issue of now taking new notes and be spraying them. In fact, I saw one of these musicians just push somebody off. It was trending a few days back. So you look at it that we have the laws. Let us, for God's sake, implement those that we can implement to make life easier. People are really talking about this spraying of new currencies. That is illegal.
They're not really so much quarreling with the spraying of the currency. They are quarreling with the fact that the currency is available at parties, but it's not available on the streets for people to spend. That's where the quarrel seems to lie.
Well, again, if good planning had gone into this, and you have withdrawn about 1.9 trillion. If you put 1 trillion back, at least people have access to their money. Part of the difficulty I still cannot understand is why, on the average, maybe weekly, some of us might be spending 100K. It's not impossible. I mean, even as a politician, you see people calling you. Not all of them have a bank account.
The CBN has said you're in the minority.
Of course, but the majority of the people who have 5,000, 1,000, and they cannot have access to their money is the major problem. That is why the crisis came. I just told you, we pay our caddies 3,000 naira.
You can do that with a transfer.
Well, if they don't have a bank account, how do you do it? And by the time you do transfer, you're already taxing the person. Because when you do transfer, there is cost implication.
For you?
To another bank. Of course.
For you, not for the...
Exactly. Do I want to pay tip on 3,000 naira? Because already the official money is 2,500. So I'm already giving 3,000 to assist. Sometimes I pay 4,000. So when you look at all this...
Wait, Senator, golfers don't want to pay that.
They don't want to pay 10 naira on... No. Because the CBN has also graded how much it is that you pay on transfers. If it's less than 10,000 naira, I think it's about 10 naira or so, or 20 naira. That you pay on top of the transfer charge. So
yes,
well, when you talk about... So you don't want to pay...
It's a tax. It's even by the time I do that. No, wait a minute. By the time I pay my own tax on the money I've transferred to the person.
Yes.
Now, there are service charges for anybody using the bank services. If the guy now transfers to another person, he still pays another service fee.
It's an if.
So how does he have access to the money?
He can
if you are not saying you can no longer spend cash.
He can withdraw it as an ATM.
And by the time you withdraw an ATM, they will tell you there's a service charge. and you still have to pay that.
If we common men are doing this calculation, people will understand. But Senator, golfers don't want to pay this money on the lighter note.
Let me tell you, some senators are retired. So
but they're still golfing, and we know that golf clubs are not cheap.
Of course, it's even better for you to exercise than to be paying money to the hospitals.
Okay, well, one thing about Senator, are you concerned about this Afrigo card? I mean, because you're associated with MasterCard or something?
Yeah, well, again, when I built the infrastructure for the banks to start issuing MasterCard in Nigeria, this was way back in 2000, between 2000 and 2004. We started issuing the cards in 2004. It took 4 years because we didn't have all these pervasive internet facilities. We had to buy a VSAT to be able to talk to St. Louis. We have to connect the banks, you know. So the challenges were much. Thank God things are a lot easier today. At that time, we only spoke to the CBN that we needed a license. The CBN was not issuing any license at that time. My license was the very first switching license, and it didn't have any time limit. And of course, today I've been talking to them. What happened? They said this new policy, you have to pay 2 billion now. So would I ever have been able to start? So there are some things that, you know, when you begin to look at it, the CBN over the years, they have improved significantly. They have helped assist this economy in no small measure. But when you want to put a policy down, focus, study it, make sure you understand the impact on society and on the economy. Because if you shut down an economy for 3, 4, 5 days, only God knows how much you have lost directly or indirectly.
So for you, the bone of contention is that it is the CBN that's coming up with this Afrigo, that if it were another independent or private agency or individual or concern, you won't have any challenge with it.
The banks are licensed. They are the depository banks. They are the ones that hold the money, they issue the cards out. And we don't have shortage of banks in Nigeria. We have people who can issue the cards just like that. So it is not about availability of the cards. The cards are available. If you own a bank account, you will already be given a debit card. It's almost automatic now.
So you are afraid of this policy because you are a player in the sector. You think that the CBN as a regulator should not be involved in this?
It's even more or less the business of the banks.
Because I heard you say...
To be saying this thing.
Because you said that if the CBN has a card, who would want the other cards as opposed to the card that the
as
CBN...
a consumer.
Itself
if the
issues.
CBN tells me that I have a card, I will go for CBN's card rather than be having one card here, having one card there. But that way, the implication is very, very significant for our economy. If you want to kill the business of the commercial banks, the service they normally know how to provide, and the CBN now takes that over, there is no way you can justify. It's not done anywhere. So the banks should be allowed to continue to open their individual accounts, which they are doing, and at the same time issue out those debit cards. I don't think it's the shortage. It is the shortage of the people that own bank accounts that we have. It is not the shortage of cards for them. Once you open your bank account now, they give you your ATM card. Any bank in Nigeria will do that. So I believe if the banks, they don't meet with the CBN governor, when this kind of policy comes, is there not one of them that can say, excuse me, sir, Mr. Governor, are you not competing with us? Maybe they'll be afraid that the man might take their license. Do you know the problem? I mean, that's the problem of people you put at head of affairs in Nigeria. So people are afraid. Why should you not raise that? The function of the CBN is the bankers, the banker to the banks and to the government, not to the individual. So I think they should look at that. Yeah.
Well, there we go. At least now people know that some golfers put a lot of thought to paying caddies. It doesn't just happen like that. Well, thank you, Senator, for coming on. He's the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Privatization, Senator Ayu. We
haven't decided.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Yes, as you've seen, Nasir El-Rufai, the governor of Kaduna State, His Excellency, joins us this morning on Sunrise Daily. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
Well. What a season, what a time they were in. Yes, we know electioneering, campaigning going on at the moment, but the business of governance still has to go on while all of that is.
Yes.
But now you're counting down.
Yes,
So
100 and
almost
16 days to go, I think.
There you go.
Yes.
So
I count down every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're looking forward to?
I am. I'm looking forward to handing over the burden to someone else. And
burden?
Yeah, it's a burden. It's a burden. Trust me. And try to get my life back, spend more time with my family. I have young children. They need my time. And I have a PhD to complete. I've been on a PhD program for a few years now. I need to focus on it and get it out of it.
We've outsiders thought that has been settled, that maybe afterwards, because the APC presidential candidate said, well, you have to stay here and work with him when that happens.
Yes, that's...
What's going to happen to that?
That's what he wants. We are still talking. We are still talking. Of course, you know, Asiwaju is the candidate of our party. We'll do whatever we can, not only to get him elected, but also to make him succeed. But I still believe that when Asiwaju tells me what he wants me to do in his government, I'll be able to recommend much younger, more energetic people that can do as well a job as I can do, or even better, because, you know, our experiment in Kaduna has shown that if you empower young people and, you know, give them the political backing, they can deliver incredible results. We've proved that in Kaduna. So I do not think there is any job in the government that we cannot get a younger person. But as I said, you know, we're still talking with Asiwaju, and Nigeria is the only country whose passport I have. And whatever I can do to make sure that our country is better, I will do it. But I'm just saying I will always present options.
Okay. We'll still talk about that in a moment, but let's look a little broader about your stewardship.
Yes.
Since you say you're counting down. There was a mindset. I mean, the mindset that you must have had a certain mindset while vying for that position, the first time out, then your first term, second term. But if you're on a broader look, what kind of emotions are you dealing with now, having seen how you have performed over the years, and then how they may refer to you when you then hand over?
Frankly, Chamberlain, I don't think about that a lot. At this point in time, what I am concerned with and trying to get my team to focus is to tidy up and complete some of the things we've started, and try to correct some of our mistakes, you know, and also having seen so much in the last 7.5 years, we'll try to put in place frameworks and legislation that will ensure that the next governor doesn't spend the next 2 years, you know, finding out what we have found out in 7 years. Luckily for us in Kaduna State, my successor, I hope, from our party, was someone that has been in our government from the beginning. So he's fully informed about our policy direction and so on. But still, there are a few things that we learned even within the last 1 year that we discovered either we didn't quite get it right, or we totally ignored this problem. So we're trying to put those things in place. So it's a very busy time for us. You know, in fact, we've decided in the State Executive Council to hold our weekly meetings almost every Monday until after the elections. Then we start a handover process, because there is so much to do. I don't think much about what we have achieved or what we did not, and what people will think of our administration. We will leave that to posterity and history. All I know is that we did the best that we can, and we worked flat out in the last 7.5 years. And I do hope that what we've been able to do in many aspects of governance in the state will be sustained. But that's all. But that's all you can do. You can only do what you can do and move on and leave it to history and your successors.
When you talk about things that you're just finding out, do you want to give an example?
One of the things we just found out was there was a lot going on in certain key ministries that we didn't realize. For instance, you know, we buy books, we buy laboratory equipment, we buy, you know, these are things that you need to buy every year. We found that in previous years, we have bought those books on paper, but they are not delivered to the schools. The stores people in the Ministry of Education just have an arrangement to do the paperwork to make it appear as if these books have been delivered, but they are not, as well as medical equipment. How we found this out was the Speaker of our State House of Assembly got one of his companies to bid for this. And when he bid and won and tried to deliver, the first problem he had was that he found out that the prices were higher than what he could do because, you know, exchange rate changes, and so these are imported stuff. And he was told, no, don't worry, these things are never delivered. The Speaker of the House.
Whoa.
They are never delivered. Let's just sign this, you'll be paid, you'll take care of us, and so on. And he came to me and said, I don't understand this. I didn't come to you for this contract. We got a company that we knew, they did this. So, you know, I mean, discovering that after 5 years is quite a shock. And this is how governance is. There are many things that are buried deep that you just don't know because you're sitting at the top, and many things are happening at the bottom. So, you know, I'm just giving one example that is transactional, but there are also policy issues that, you know, we found that we have to do something about. There are things like that that we are trying very much to, you know, get going. For instance, you know, one of the decisions we've taken is that our governorship candidate will now start attending executive council meetings. He will sit in all our council meetings in attendance so that he gets to know, you know, everything that we're discussing. He sat in the first 4 years, but he's been absent in the last 4 years because he's been in the Senate. Senate doesn't sit on Monday, so I've asked him to be attending executive council so that some of these things he will see himself and, you know.
That's an unfair advantage, you don't think? Because if you're asking candidates to do that, then don't you think that a candidate of the opposition too should be asked to sit in? If this is really about continuing a legacy and ensuring that, you know, they know what the people
I have no responsibility to the candidate of the opposition. My responsibility is to my party and the overall interest of the state. And I believe that it is in the interest of the
governor,
yeah?
It's different.
Pardon?
But as a governor, you do.
Yeah. You know, I said my responsibility is to my party and the overall interest of the state. And my assessment is that the overall interest of the state will be best served if our party is re-elected. This opposition party spent 16 years, you know, doing unbelievable things that we've spent the last 8 years trying to deconstruct. And even when they were campaigning, they were still threatening they would bring back the bad teachers that we fired. They will bring back the 390 district heads that we thought place an unnecessary burden on the finances of local government. They have not learned anything. What value are they going to get sitting in the council? Our political and governance ideologies are miles apart.
If for any reason, because some people will say that oftentimes politics is more emotional than rational. If at the end of the day, if for some reason, you know, they are elected, but there's a handover period, would you consider then having them in the council meeting?
Yeah, I mean, if another party is elected, I will invite not only the governor-elect, but also the state chairman of that party to sit in an executive council so that we have a seamless transition. The interest of the state prevails. But, you know, this is how we look at things. And
that challenge that you discovered, because that happens as you said, in several other policies and several other governments in different states.
Yes.
What would you recommend as a solution to that?
Look, the solution to it is very early in the game of governance, you know, really be hands-on. Don't assume, because, you know, many of us went to school when these things worked. Don't assume that they work like you used to. And this is why it's important to have younger people who are closer to how the world works now than some of us that went to school in the 60s and 70s and think that, you know, students get textbooks. Every year, you know, beginning of the year, academic year, we get textbooks, we get pencils, we get this. These things are not done anymore. So you see them on the budget line, you propose to the State Assembly, is appropriated, but the schools don't have those things. And the headmasters can't speak because it is their bosses at the headquarters that do these funny things. So you have to be really hands-on. You have to pay surprise visits to schools, for instance, and say, look, do you have books? Do you have chalk? Do you have this? Or you pay surprise visits to hospitals and primary health centers and ask whether the equipment that you proposed in last year's budget and has been contracted and supposedly delivered is actually in the hospitals and primary health centers. You'll be very surprised what's going on. It took us several years before we figured out because, you know, my presumption always, personally, is that you are innocent unless proven guilty. You are good unless you show you are bad. So when you have that view about human nature, a lot can go wrong under your watch, and you are hardly ever aware.
I'm just a little, I mean, right now as you're speaking, my mind traveled to an instance where I have seen where, you know, things have been provided for a hospital, and those the materials are only used when they hear that, you know, there is a government is coming or a senior person is coming, you know, so they are also...
You have to just get into your car. Don't even tell your protocol and security people where you're going. Just get into your car and say, follow me. And you drive to the place. Unless you do that, and then you'll discover many things, and then you can take steps to try to remedy them. Because, look, the system is broken. The public service system is totally broken, and only works in isolated islands of performance. It's really worrying, and it's one of the things that, you know, tell some of us that, look, maybe your time is up.
Okay, so I always find it very interesting. You're in your 60s, and you always talk about how, and this is not the first time, every time we've come to CAD Invest in Kaduna, you always talk about how you want young people. The Ibrahim Kashim Fellowship, which you started, was also in light of that. So it would seem that you've really put your money where your mouth is with regards to having young people. I'm surprised that the governorship candidate that has emerged from your party, though, at least for your state, because some people would say one would have thought that maybe you would have endorsed somebody much younger in that stead. I mean, do you want
to... But he's young. He's young.
He's younger than yourself?
Much younger.
Much younger.
He's like more than 10 years younger.
Okay, so
he's more than 10 years younger, and frankly, we tried to bring up several young people. We looked at 3 or 4 people that we were looking at. We didn't want any of my successors to be older than early 40s, mid 40s. But at the end of the day, the person that we narrowed on and the deputy governor were the best when we polled. We polled 4 times. We did a survey across the state. I didn't wake up in the morning and just picked someone. We had 4 different polls to test the acceptability of the various aspirants, okay? And 2 of them continued to be the top 2. And the others, including other younger people that we groomed, just didn't show up as well as they should. There are others that were outsiders, I would say, people that were running federal government agencies, or, you know, that I consider outsiders because they don't know the change in policy direction that we pursued in the last 4 years. So my goal was to ensure that we have our successor from amongst our original APC Kaduna team of 2014.
So you do consider...
In the end, we ended up with 1.
you do consider that age is a big factor in leadership, and that, you know, maybe Nigerians have not been making this hue and cry over the age of the presidential candidate of your party for nothing. How does that work for you? I mean, in terms of looking at the age of the presidential candidate vis-a-vis your own, you know, advocacy that, you know, for leadership, especially looking at where Nigeria is and looking at the amount of work that needs to be done, somebody younger should be there.
Yeah, look, instinctively, I would prefer to see younger people at levels of leadership, okay? But, you know, and we've tried to do that in Kaduna. We brought in young people, and they have performed wonderfully. A few have disappointed, as is normal. We brought in women. They have done very well. A few have disappointed, it's normal. Now, at the national level, I would have preferred a younger person, but the reality of Nigeria is that that younger person must also have varied experience that will enable him hold the country together. It's a complex society. It requires experience. It requires a track record of performance that maybe a 50-year-old cannot have, cannot convince either the political class or even the general public that he has. So I consider the septuagenarians that are running for office now as transitional leaders, okay? My hope is that whoever is the next president of Nigeria, and I can say if Asiwaju or when Asiwaju wins, because I'm confident he will win, you will see a large collection of young people in the administration, because I think Asiwaju sees his role as that of a transitional leader. You know, fix some of the problems that we have, but build a new leadership class. That is the only way, because it is very difficult for a 40-year-old or 50-year-old to convince Nigerians, or even those of us in the political system, that he has the experience to manage this country. It's a complex country. And some of the people running, frankly, you know, are a joke as far as I'm concerned. People, you know, every job looks easy from a distance. But I've had the privilege of working with at least 3 presidents very closely. And I have seen the demands of that office and what it is. And people just don't know. Even being governor is tough, but people don't know. They think it's easy. People can always sit and criticize, oh, he should have done this, done that. Get them to do that, then the Ngbati starts.
Like many are saying on Twitter already, but let's give the moments. Let's go to Lagos. We've got our colleagues. They've got questions for you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Good morning, Your Excellency. You know, it's very concerning what you raised, you know, the example of the public service system that you talked about earlier. I mean, it only points to the validity, well, if someone would look at it from that perspective, of the corruption perception index that we chatted about when this program started. You know, so there are those who wonder if that is the problem. At the end of the day, everyone calls the name of the president. However, there are people, just like you have experienced, who are not making the jobs of the governors or the president to show the way it should show. So the corruption perception index only gets worse as a result of that. And you said the other time that the system is broken. What then do we need to do? Because we can't just fold our arms, can we?
No, we can't. No, we can't. I agree with you completely. Look, a country makes progress if it has visionary and strong political leaders. But that alone will not lead to progress unless you also have a functional public service, okay? So it doesn't matter how good a president is. If the public service is broken, the president cannot succeed. The same with the governor. So, you know, I think one of the major priorities for any administration is to look at the structure of the public service and undertake a huge surgical operation on it to make it lean, mean, effective, and competent. Right now, the federal bureaucracy is over-bloated. There are over 800 ministries, departments, and agencies. The Oronsanya report that recommended the merger of institutions has not been implemented. In fact, since then, more have been added. There is no political will to face this issue. We spend 60% of our budget, 60–70%, on recurrent expenditure, most of which is consumed by the bureaucracy, either the salaries and overheads of running the government and their pensions. That is not the way to develop. We must, slim down the government, and ensure that the best and brightest go into public service. The public service should not be a dumping ground of the sons and daughters of those that are connected, sons and daughters of the elite. Because right now, going into the public service is no longer based on competitive examinations and so on, where you pick the best and brightest. You pick the worst and the connected.
So then,
and that has to change.
My apologies,
the public service itself needs to be looked at, and surgically, the size, the quality, everything, training programs, the age, position, when you are of a certain age and you have not got to a certain level, you should be exited. The military already does that. We should do something like that in the public service.
Is that the plan? Okay.
In addition to getting a good president, we must create for ourselves a sound public service. We don't have one now. Well, it is part of the reason why corruption is so blatant and widespread.
I guess we'll get to that, later on the program. But for Kaduna State, and from that discovery you made, and I think Chamberlain asked you something along that line the other time, what then needs to be done? Because you've discovered it, just as you said, in just one instance, and there are several others like that. Is there a machinery being put in place in Kaduna State to discover such occurrences and mitigate them? Perhaps some kind of undercover work, among the ministries, departments, and agencies in the state, so that the next government can have something to work with and be able to give better governance to the people.
Yes, we have a whistleblower law that we enacted in Kaduna State. We even have a witness protection program just to facilitate this. And there are many other things that we discovered early enough and corrected because of the whistleblower law that enables people to submit anonymous petitions of wrongdoing anywhere in the government. According to the public service rules operational in Nigeria, an anonymous petition should not be entertained. This is crazy. We in Kaduna State, we passed a law that says whether a petition is signed by a person or anonymous, we'll investigate it. And because of that, we found many cases of wrongdoing that we've corrected, that we have disciplined the people, we've dismissed many people, we are prosecuting many people. We also passed an anti-corruption law in the state, created an anti-corruption office in the office of the Attorney General. We didn't create another agency like EFCC. We don't need it. We just think a unit in the Attorney General's office can look at cases like that, and they have done extremely well in tracking cases of corruption and dealing with them. This is why I believe that if you now do a corruption perception index that is subnational in nature, all right, go state by state and measure the corruption perception, you will find that in Kaduna State, the corruption perception is much lower than most states because we've taken certain measures. We have made examples of people in the public service. We have sacked those that have been found to be fiddling with public funds. We are prosecuting them. We've not convicted anybody because the judicial system is just pathetic, it's too slow, and it is, in my view, often on the side of the crooks rather than on the side of the government or the innocent. One of the biggest mistakes I think this country made was creating this National Industrial Court, which sees its duty as taking sides with the employee against the employer. It is not always the employer that is wrong, but the National Industrial Court always, 99% of the time, rules against the employer and in favor of criminals, which the judicial system also is slow to punish. There are people that we sacked from a Kaduna State Water Corporation in 2016. because they embezzle counterpart funding of a multilateral development project. We got a judgment from National Industrial Court last week that one of the thieves should be reinstated because he was not giving a written query. He got a verbal query. They did not advert their minds to the fact that the man, embezzled millions of Naira. That's not their concern. Their concern was he didn't get a written query. He got a verbal query according to public service rules, blah, 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 blah. So there is that problem, and it's systemic. And unless we stand as a country and say that this has to change, I'm sorry, Nigeria will just be struggling forever and ever, will be a country of potential permanently.
Morning, Your Excellency. I'll also like to talk about public service, but with a more futuristic outlook, if we have time. But let's yet again, zero in on Kaduna State. Either it's Birnin Gwari or other parts of Kaduna, we get reports from our correspondent of insecurity every now and then, kidnappings and attacks and all of that. I know you have said time again that there is little that a governor can do under the structures that we currently have, that security always stops at the buck of the president's table, But then again, Nigerians will say the governor is the chief security officer of the state. So to what extent would you take responsibility for some of these reports that we get from Kaduna State?
Look, I am the governor of the state, and people elected me to ensure that their lives and properties are safe and secure. So to that extent, I take responsibility and I do the best I can. But I must repeat, for the avoidance of any doubt, that I don't control the police, I don't control the armed forces, I don't control the security agencies. What we do as state governors is provide the logistics and the support and supplement what they get from the federal government. For instance, when I came into office in 2015, we found that the last time the police command in Kaduna got overhead was September of the previous year, September of 2014. They were not paid any overhead. So we've had to be running the police. The police, you go to a DPO, he doesn't have paper to even write complaints. So we've had to provide money from the state resources to cover that. Does the federal government budget for that? Yes, it does. Does the money get to the divisions and the commands? They don't. Is it my problem? Is it my responsibility? No. But as governor, I have to make sure that these police stations run. We build police stations. We provide vehicles for them. We provide vehicles, 200 and something vehicles to security agencies twice in 2015 when we came into office, and then in 2018 again, and we are planning to do so again before we leave office, because these vehicles are used and they don't last as long as they should. So we provide the logistics. We have a network of informants. We pay them money to give us information. We provide the information to the action agencies. But if I say that there is a bandit here, I am sure there is a bandit camp here, and the military doesn't go in, or the Air Force doesn't bomb the camp, or the police doesn't go in, what can I do? I can't come out and say, the federal government is not doing what it should do. But really, this is the problem. We are chief security officers in name, but we have no control over the coercive forces or giving them orders to do what they have to do. They have to get clearance from Abuja. That's why the buck stops at the president's desk. And when the president now gave them a deadline and say, get rid of these people, we saw massive improvement. In the last 3-4 months, there has been incredible improvement everywhere in the state. Birnin Gwari, Chukun have almost been cleared of banditry. We still have cases once in a while, but not what it used to be. Kachia, Kajuru, Giwa are the 3 local governments now that we are having issues. But the military, the police, the Air Force are there. And to be fair to them, in the last 3-4 months, they have been doing an excellent job. But that was only because the president said, you have to end this before the end of December. The president didn't say that 2 years ago. It would perhaps been a different story completely. So yes, we feel bad, we feel responsible, but our hands are tied to a certain extent.
We hope that, you know, that is resolved as much as possible, and it's a conversation that continues, particularly for those, you know, positioning to take your office as you exit. Still on Kaduna, Your Excellency, we've, you know, had cause to interact with you, particularly during CAD Invest, and we can refer to, you know, some of the investments that your administration has attracted to the state. Or lamb rice is one of them, and your partnerships with Google. You know, to that effect, there are reports that you've been able to increase the internally generated revenue of Kaduna State to the region of about 50 billion naira or thereabout, and
more than that.
More than that. And there are reports quoting the worth of your investment to the tune of 2.8 billion naira. But you started off on a note of reflection. If we tie that to, you know, Kaduna's debt profile as you exit office, which is to the tune of $580 billion or so to speak, how much of an asset, you know, the financial increases that you've recorded to Kaduna's debt profile?
Yeah, well, look, the investments that we've attracted in the last 7 years actually total about $4.3 billion. It's much more than 2.8. And the results are clear. You know, our focus is bring in investors, create jobs, private sector jobs, good paying jobs for our young people. And I think in that area, we have achieved our objectives and put the state on the right path, in spite of all the challenges of insecurity. Now, when we came into office, Kaduna State was the second most indebted state in the country. As far as foreign debt is concerned, it was 200 and close to $300 million, sorry. In our time, we increased that by another between $350 and $500 million. We had to borrow because we took office when the country and the world are going through challenges of recession, and the only way we can develop the infrastructure that we need to support our investments, the only way we can improve our schools and health system so that our people will be educated and healthy and be productive members of society, is to borrow. But we borrowed long term from the World Bank. We borrowed at very low rates of interest, and we invested in the infrastructure needed to attract these investors. That's why they keep coming, in spite of the headlines and the concerns about security. And anyone that visits Kaduna, the capital of the state, or visits Zaria and Kafanchan, the three metropolitan centers of the state, where more than 60% of the population live, will see the results of our investment. And we believe that we have put the state on the right path to attract more investors. There is now an ongoing real estate boom in Kaduna. There are people that are relocating from Abuja to Kaduna to live there and work in Abuja by taking the train every morning. So, you know, we believe that we have put the state on the right path. We didn't borrow to consume. We didn't borrow to pay salaries. We didn't borrow to run the government. We use our internally generated revenue, our VAT revenues from the Federation account, and these loans to develop the state. And the development is very clear. You can see it in every sector, from education to health to infrastructure. And I think we are putting the state on a sound footing for the future.
Well, Your Excellency, there was something you said, you know, recently, which I'd like you to quote to you, and I hope we'll be able to put it on the screen for you to see as well. You said, "We spent 300 billion naira per annum to subsidize electricity, which we hardly get. We are subsidizing 50% of electricity supply. We have exchange rate of 400 naira to a dollar, but if you want to buy dollar across the road," you mentioned the name of a location in Kaduna, "it costs 700 naira. Some people would buy at 400 and sell at 700 naira, costing us about 4 trillion naira per annum." And you on and on you went. So how do we cut this down? This happened.
And subsidy cost us about 6 trillion.
Okay. Well, I mean that. No. Subsidy.
Fuel subsidy.
Yes, and subsidies cost us
fuel
about 6 billion. Exactly. So, but all of this happened, just as you said, under the APC government. So why then? What is it that's made this happen, and why then should Nigerians trust the APC government for another 4 years?
Well, look, what you are seeing happening, whether it is fuel subsidy, electricity subsidy, or foreign exchange subsidy, these subsidies have been with us from time immemorial. The PDP government also had that problem, okay? It's just that we don't talk about what they have done. So it's a problem. And the problem is not the APC government. I think the problem is Nigerians who are not willing to face the truth. You know? What is the truth about petroleum, about fuel? We have queues now. People are paying between 300 Naira per liter, in actual fact, up to 500 Naira per liter in parts of the country. And they have to queue for hours to get it. Why? Because of this unsustainable and broken down subsidy regime that we have chosen to maintain for the past 50 years. It has not worked. It is not an APC problem. It is a Nigerian problem, because today if President Buhari says remove subsidy, the NLC will be out on the street protesting. We've had that in, under Obasanjo's administration. We've had that 3 or 4 times, anytime the price was slightly increased. So it's a Nigerian problem. We need a national conversation to tell each other the truth. How can we subsidize fuel, petrol, by 6 trillion in a year when our national education budget, national, I mean federal plus all the states, is not up to 2 trillion? When our national health budget, federal plus all the states, I'm talking recurrent and capital now, is not up to 2 trillion. Which country spends 3 times subsidizing petrol, 3 times what it spends on infrastructure, more than 3 times what it spends on education, on health? It's a choice we have to make as a people. It's not about APC or anything. And the fact that this fuel subsidy is not sustainable is the reason why all the presidential candidates, none of them has said, I will not remove fuel subsidy. So what are we waiting for? But already the price is 300 to 500. Yeah, but, okay? It's a national conversation, not a partisan one.
Okay, because I was going to, some of the members, or some of those Nigerians, the key ones, are in your party. We do remember at that time, they were up in arms saying, don't remove fuel subsidy.
Yes. And some of the Nigerians that were in previous government were also there and supporting it. So I'm saying, you see, what I'm saying is that it is a national conversation. It's not a partisan one. And I think we are getting there because we're in campaign season. Atiku Abubakar has said, I will remove fuel subsidy. Peter Obi has said, I will remove fuel subsidy. Asiwaju Bola Tinubu has said, I will remove fuel subsidy.
But will they, when they get there?
They will. They have to. The country will be bankrupt if they don't. Already the states are distressed because this 6 trillion that you're subsidizing is half of the money is supposed to go to state governments and local government. That doesn't go. This is why most states are already building up salary arrears. Most states are struggling. Those of us that have higher IGR are surviving, but many states that have very low IGR hardly pay salaries now, and the arrears are building up. So the next government must remove it, otherwise the country will simply collapse. It will be Sri Lanka.
One thing you said in the opening, which is why I just remember now the lighter note, many politicians say you're too frank for their liking. Because when you say you discovered that ill in the state and you wanted to correct it, and then it turns out, wait a minute, is the speaker supposed to be setting up a company to be bidding for contracts in the state?
Yes, the speaker,
does the law allow them to
members of the legislature, okay, are allowed to have their own businesses.
But as somebody who is in government, who is a speaker,
but he is not
tantamount to conflict of interest.
He's not in the executive.
He is a key person.
He's not in the executive. He doesn't sit when we take decisions to award contracts or anything. In fact, as I told you, he didn't even tell me or told anyone that he was bidding for the job. He asked a company in which he's a shareholder to bid for it. And of course, when they had this problem, they came to him. Okay.
All right. Now, your party, I mean, yes, you want your party to win the elections.
Yes.
But I know you must have heard several times the indices, how they say when the president came in May, at that time, fuel price was 87 Naira per liter. He jacked it up 66.7% to about 145 Naira per liter. And today, it's way over, who knows, in different places, 3, 4, 5. Some even are telling me yesterday they bought 650 per litre at the moment.
I'm not surprised.
And then he also did say he was going to generate 10,000 megawatts of distributable power in the next 3 years during the first term in office. Several other indices like that. And these have not materialized. So Nigerians keep wondering, okay, fine, let's not look at the person, but let's look at the promises from our present reality. They don't see why they should stick with the APC.
Well, I'll tell you why they should stick with the APC. And I'm not going to say the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, because we're not devils, okay? They should stick with the APC because they should look at what we've been able to achieve in the last 8 years in very difficult circumstances. Chamberlain, there has never been any national government in Nigeria's history that has faced the challenges that the Buhari administration has faced. Okay? When we came into office, the price of oil collapsed to $26 a barrel. Okay? That was when we thought, and I'm one of those that led the governors, we convinced the president this is an opportunity to deregulate this subsidy thing. Just allow the market, because the price was so low that it was almost what we were selling. Okay? So that was when it was moved up to that price. And the whole idea was that the government will hands off. As the price moves up slightly, you increase the pump price slightly. But who sabotaged it? The NNPC. The NNPC made an announcement and linked it to the president as if it was the president that fixed the price.
But the president is the minister.
No, he is the minister, but look, the minister of Agri doesn't fix the price of gari or rice, which is more important to our lives than fuel.
But the buck stops at the president's table.
No, the buck may stop at the president's table, but he doesn't decide the price of the biscuit you eat. There are some things that the government does. There are some things that you allow the market to do. What we wanted to convince the president in 2016, when you had that increase in price, was for the government to hands off this subsidy so that we'll get out of it for the first time. All right? But it was sabotaged. Again, we went and complained, but no action was taken. Now, secondly, the country went into recession because of that. COVID came in, COVID-19, lockdown for 1.5 to 2 years, nothing got done. Okay? So and immediately after we got out of COVID, the Russia-Ukraine war disrupted supply chains, raised the cost of shipping, raised the cost of food. This is happening all over the world. It's not unique to Nigeria. This administration faced many challenges that I want to say the previous administrations did not. In the 60 years of PDP rule, oil price averaged $70, $80 a barrel. There was a time it went up to $140 a barrel.
Yeah, but even in the places where we ought to have been benefiting, we did not benefit. So, for instance, the Russia-Ukraine war saw oil prices going up.
Yes.
Nigeria is an exporter of crude oil. We should have benefited from that. But as a result of our ineptitude in protecting our pipelines in the south of the country, Nigeria was not able to benefit from that.
That is part of the problem. But the main problem why we did not benefit is because of fuel subsidy. The subsidy takes every revenue that we earn from the sale of crude oil and more. That's the main reason. Vandalism is one thing. It reduced our oil production by a percentage, so we're not even meeting our OPEC quota. I agree with you. But if we had just sold the 1.3, 1.4 million barrels per day and got the money into the treasury instead of spending it on subsidy, Nigeria would have been better off. And as I said, this subsidy issue requires a national conversation and national consensus. It is not a partisan thing. It has been going on for years. We tried to solve it under the Buhari administration. We're sabotaged, and now we are where we are.
No, the Buhari administration could have had that conversation. It refused to have that conversation. And people will ask, why should we trust a leadership of a party?
To be quite honest, we've had the conversation at the level of the National Economic Council, chaired by the Vice President. We all agreed it should go. It was Buhari himself. He took a decision that this subsidy will hurt the poor, and I won't do it. Okay? So it is not about not having a national conversation. Everyone agreed, but the president took that decision. And that is why our presidential candidate in the same party can say, I will remove it. Okay, so it is not a party position. It is the personal decision of the president, and he's the president.
Okay. There was one conversation I remember you had. I think you chaired that committee as well, on your party's decision about restructuring.
Restructuring, yeah.
What happened to the report?
We submitted the report. The president agreed with it. Action is supposed to be taken. Some bills have even been drafted and sent to the National Assembly, but it has not gotten the traction that it has. Again, this is another thing that all the presidential candidates have agreed that it should be adopted and implemented.
So
and it will solve many of our problems.
In this government? Didn't the president agree with it?
I honestly don't know. I have not, for the past 3-4 years, I have stopped trying to understand how the federal government works. Okay? I just focused on trying to make my state work because that's my primary responsibility. There are some things that we agree with the president, and he says this will get done, it doesn't get done. And those that refuse to get it done don't get punished.
So there are big questions when you say that. I mean, because right now people are wondering what is happening with your party's presidential campaign council. It doesn't appear that everybody is on the same page, singing from the same hymn sheet. So for instance, if you have a president who is saying, I don't want to remove subsidy because it's going to hurt
the president is not on the ballot. The president has his tenure up to 29th May. He may not want to remove subsidy, but our party, if you look at our manifesto, we never promised that we're going to keep petroleum subsidy. We never did. Our party never promised that we'll redesign the currency. It's not in our manifesto.
Well,
you need to separate, okay, the personal decisions of some people in the villa from the manifesto of the party. It's important to understand that.
Is there a division? Because the people in the villa, some people will argue that they're part of your party.
No, most of them are not. That's what is interesting. Most of them are not.
Is there a division between those around the president and those within your party right now, which is affecting your party's presidential campaign council?
I believe there is. I believe that there are elements in the villa that want us to lose the elections because they didn't get their way. They had their candidate. Their candidate didn't win the primaries. And I think they are still trying to get us to lose the elections. And they are hiding behind the president's desire to do what he thinks is right. I'll give 2 examples. This petroleum subsidy, okay, which is costing the country trillions of naira, was something that we all agreed will be removed. In fact, I had a discussion with the president and showed him why it had to go, because how can you have a capital budget of 200 billion for federal roads and then spend 2 trillion on subsidy? This was a conversation I had with the president in 2021 when the subsidy thing started rising. He was convinced. We left. It changed. Everyone in the government agreed. It changed, okay? Secondly, the second example I will give is this currency redesign. You have to understand the president. People are blaming the governor of the central bank for currency redesign. No. You have to go back and look at the president's first outing as president. He did this. Buhari Idiagbon regime changed our currency and did it in secrecy with a view to catching those that are stashing away illicit funds. It's a very good intention, very clean intention. The president's heart is white, okay? But doing it at this time, within the time allotted, just doesn't make any political, economic, or sense. And for such a program to work, okay, we have to be involved as governors, as subnationals. Because, look, in my state, there are 2 local governments without banks. In Borno State, out of 27 local governments, only 2 have banks. In Yobe State, out of 17 local governments, only 2 have banks. So how do you expect farmers in every part. And remember, Borno State is 4 times the size of the 5 southeast states. So how do you expect everyone to change his currency within the time limit? Look, there are some things
So knowing the example and given the example that you've given, what then are the chances of your candidate in the presidential elections?
Look, the people of Nigeria should understand that these are not the policies of the APC, they are not the policies of our candidate, they are the policies of fifth columnists that want to bring us down. They want to bring this country down. Because, look here, the governors met a few days ago and sent a delegation to meet with the governor of the central bank on this matter. We've never been really involved in this. We said, look, we are the people that listen to the cries of those below. I went to Cubao and Ikara for campaign last week. And after the campaign, after the rally, the Farmers Association came to me. They said, look, we thank you for all your good policies in agriculture. Buhari has helped in anchor borrowers and this and that. And we thank you particularly for bringing Olam that takes up all our grains that we produce. But why are you trying to make us poor overnight? There is only one bank branch in Cubao local government. Cubao local government is larger than Anambra State. One local government. There is one bank branch. And these are farmers that have millions of naira of their hard-earned money. These are not politicians in Abuja that have stashed billions. These are farmers that have millions of naira. It's their hard-earned money. And they want to change it. And they have to travel 100 kilometers to the nearest bank branch. And on their way, there is a chance that bandits will even seize their money. How can that be done in a few months? It can't. So we went to the governor of the central bank. I said, look, extend this thing. And let's work together. Okay? The governors with security agencies, we provide vehicles to the banks and central bank. We go town to town, village to village, market to market, and say, come and change your money. We support the idea of redesign. We know that there are people with stashes of cash. We also want that mopped up, okay? But we should not in the process make ordinary people suffer or ignite the anger of voters against our party as if it is our party's policy. It is not.
All right.
It is the policy of a few people. Well, and it's probably either not well thought through or intentionally designed to crash the political process. Because what happens if tomorrow people start protesting because they don't have cash, they can't transact? People are trading by barter because many that have deposited their cash cannot get the new currency.
All right, Excellency, we need to go at this point, and perhaps we will try to get one more bite at the cherry before you hand over. It's over 100 days, so there's still a lot of time for us to have one more interview with you before that time.
So there is 117 days.
So there you go.
116 days.
You've really been counting down.
Yeah. I want to get out. I want to rest.
All right. Well, we will get out of the studio now because we are completely out of time. But we thank you for coming on, His Excellency Nasir El-Rufai, Governor of Kaduna State. Well, that is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now.
Bye for now.